How's everybody going? It's Devin here back with another video on Idle Identifier Studios. So we're breaking down more of the Phase 1 of Survivor Wisconsin before we really head into that Phase 2 of Survivor Wisconsin starting with Season 5. Hopefully this winter after the holidays we can get a season of all new players, including Season 6. So that's the theme of this, is we're going to be diving into new players of Survivor Wisconsin, and just as a whole. These players never compete in Survivor Whitewater either, just Survivor Wisconsin. So Richie and myself are ranking our top 10 newbie players. I know we just did a top 10 players in the whole entire Phase 1. So the order of those players are going to get into play with this, as this is based on their gameplay and our opinion. So we're going to dive into that, each of us doing how we did it last time. Leave your opinions in the comments. We want to hear them. This is just our opinion. We might be right, we might be wrong. It's up to you guys as well to decide your own opinions. So let's dive into that thing. All right, y'all. Joined by Rich Dog Richie, the original fan favorite of Survivor Whitewater himself. But we're not talking about Survivor Whitewater. What are we talking about today, Richie?
We're talking about Survivor Wisconsin, the new era of the Idle Identifier Survivor Series.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the top 10 newbies from this Phase 1 of Survivor Wisconsin. These are players that have only played in Survivor Wisconsin, have never seen their face play in Survivor Whitewater. So we'll be breaking that down, kind of how we did our last video. These are just top 10 new players. And this is a little hindsight and a little idea for those players that are looking to possibly play in the future, because hopefully our Season 5 and maybe even 6 is going to be all new players, hopefully after the holidays. So if you're interested, hit me up on our Instagram, idle.identifiers. Hit me up, hit Richie up. Just figure it out. We'll get you in it. All right, so we're going to be doing honorable mentions before we get into our top 10. Just 2 players. Don't worry, I'm not doing my whole top 15 this time. So Richie, if you want to kick it off with your first 2 honorable mentions.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so my first honorable mentions, at number 12 was Jacob. At 11 was Alex. Jacob and Alex both were honestly very close to making it onto the list. For me, what I based it on was strategic play, but another thing I based it on was potentially, like, if they made it to the end or made it further in a game, like, how likely were they to make it to the end? How likely were they to, like, win at the end? And Jacob, I really did want to put up a lot higher. And Jacob was so close to getting on the list, but the thing with Jacob is that I just don't feel like he would have made it that far after the merge that season, especially with how many big names were going around. And if he does make the end, there's a good chance that Adam and or Darius is there alongside him, just judging by how alliances were working out, how the season played out. And I just feel like Jacob, as much as I would have wanted him to win, I don't know if he would have won. It's really kind of up in the air. I feel like he definitely would have made a deeper run had he not gotten out when he did with the whole idol situation, but I don't know. It's like, I mean, Jacob is kind of a question mark. I do think there's a small chance he could have, but it's like, with how alliances worked out, who the power players were after the merge, I just don't know if he would have actually won. But I do think that Jacob was definitely an active enough player to earn his spot on the honorable mentions. Alex was another curious case. Like, him, as I spilled water on my jeans, him and my number 10 actually kept switching spots, like, even like an hour before we started recording. Like, it was switching back and forth between Alex and my number 10. And the reason I put Alex here and now as my number 10 kind of had to do with the fact that every single tribal he went to, he was at risk for some reason. And if he had made it further in the game, like Summer Solstice, if he makes it further in the game, I don't feel like he makes it far into the merge unless he gets very lucky. Because it's like it was very clear that almost everyone wanted to go for Connor and or Alex to get rid of that connection, stop any potential alliances. And would they have worked with each other? Who really knows? They say one thing, but what really could have happened could have been an entirely different thing. And with Evolution, does he make it to the merge? If he makes it to the merge, he probably just tries to ride it out with Nate, and he probably just becomes what Cece was in that situation, in all honesty. Like, he probably kind of becomes that second Nate-like person to just try to ride it out to the end. But I do think Alex may have a higher chance of making it to the end over Nate. despite the fact that Nate was better at challenges. But then does he win against some of those big players? I don't know. But talk about what we did see from him. It's like Alex is a very good strategic player, and I definitely wanted to give him an honorable mention. The only reason he's not at the top, like in the top 10 for me, it was just kind of because of the fact that both times he played, we really didn't get to see. Well, we did see a lot, but it's like I feel like we didn't get to see as much from him when he was in trouble because he only went to tribal twice in both of his seasons versus other people who he was even up against who went to tribal a hell lot more than he did in one way or the other. So and Jacob were someone that I definitely wanted to have on here. They were actually both really close to making it on the list. Like an hour before, I was like, is this right? I don't know, but this is why I ended up putting them at. So
Yeah, I mean, I for me, I had Alex just outside my top 10 too. Not on honorable mentions. I had him at 13. I agree with everything you're saying. I like having him in our Survivor Wisconsin series a lot. I think he's got a lot of potential.
Alex is awesome.
Yeah, it just hasn't come through yet, and it definitely could. And I hope we see him in the future. But yeah, we haven't seen a lot of time with him when he has been on camera. He's been awesome. But yeah, I think he only had to go to tribal twice, or was he?
Yeah, it was twice in Summer Solstice, twice in Evolution, because I would know from Evolution. I know that.
Yeah, I remember from Evolution. But Solstice, did Nate go off before him?
It was the last two before the merge, because then it was Nate, and then it was Alex. And a good chunk of the reason why is because Liz just didn't trust Alex from the start. Why? I don't know, because I don't think we were ever really told why she didn't really trust him from the start. It was just kind of random, and I'm like, he's sneaky. How is he sneaky? It was just like, Ryan is sneaky. Alex is sneaky. How are they sneaky? Like, tell us more, girl. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like a lot of Alex's target was put on him just by everyone figuring out pretty early on that he and Connor were siblings, which, I mean, I can get in terms of, like, tribe alliances or whatever, but it's also kind of like, do you really think that they're going to, like, throw a challenge for each other to save the other one? Probably not. Like, I think the both of them would be smart enough to play their own game, you know? Like,
I don't think they would have aligned together regardless, so I don't think it would have mattered. But yeah,
I feel like Alex definitely would have been smart enough to cut Connor towards the end had he gotten there. But the thing is that, does he actually get to the end of Summer Solstice? I don't think so, because if Connor goes on some immunity run or has immunity in some way, shape, or form, they just go for Alex instead of Kyle, probably. So, like, in a real life situation, should Alex make it back in over Allie, I feel like not much changes. I still feel like maybe it's a tie. Maybe Alex goes back to the Yassinis. Or maybe they just vote him off right away again. No. I don't really know. But I really want to hope he would have. But it's a big question mark with them. So
yeah, it's tough to say. I did like what I saw from Alex. It just didn't go his way. Just felt short of the merge both times. And then Jacob, I'll get into because I actually have him in my top 10. So we'll dive into him more when I get to that. But yeah, Alex, I don't have.
Way to spoil that, Devin.
Sorry, not really. But yeah, Alex definitely, I had him right on the verge of it. I kind of, out of the 21 people that are newbies for Survivor Wisconsin, I had 14 people, and I was like, that were right in the mix of it. So we can move on to my honorable mentions then. All right, so now my honorable mentions. So I had to give credit to Maddie. She was right on the verge for me. Because she did survive a lot of tribals. I think she went to all 4 tribals, and so she survived a couple. She went to 5, got voted off on the 5th one, I believe. So she survived 4 rounds, which is still pretty impressive, given that she was probably the name most of the time to go out. So it's very impressive. Definition of a survivor, as I've said before. Really like to see her play again. She definitely had a lot of good knowledge, knew a lot about returning players. I'd like to see her in a future season where there's other people involved that aren't like these big names from Whitewater, and see how she does. The only reason I don't have her in my top 10 is I guess she didn't really do anything crazy. I mean, it was just more survival tactics that she used, which was fun to watch, and she was entertaining. But I just think the 10 people I have, or 11 people I have ahead of her, just played the game a little bit better in some other ways. And then, I know this might be controversy for you, Richie, but I do have Jasper at 11. Yes, he played a very sloppy game. Yes, he didn't really care if he pissed people off or not. Yes, he didn't know exactly what he was doing a lot of the game, but he did do a lot of other tactics that I like in a Survivor player. He was a challenge piece, which was fun to watch. and he did find an idol and make a crazy play with it. Give or take, it wasn't a very hard decision to make, but he did force two other people to use idols. He found an advantage as well that kind of saved him around. Where I don't know if I would have done that tactic myself with being able to see someone else vote with really being like forceful about it, but it did get him to survive another round, which helped him make it further into the game. So I think Jasper's one of our best villains we have of the new era and out of the newbies. Probably one of the only villains, really. So I got to give credit where credit's due. Yes, I don't think he's an excellent player, and maybe next time we see him, he will grow into a better player and learn from his mistakes. But based off being a challenge beast and finding some tools to help him make it further, I will give him that credit. So that's why I got Jasper still at 11, even though he did play a little bit sloppy, but
Yeah,
he definitely made some crazy stuff happen still, and was entertaining as hell.
yeah, Jasper was someone who, believe it or not, actually was on the edge of this list. I believe he was like 13 or 14 for me. The reason why Jasper was off kind of was because of the fact that, like, kind of like what we said, he did play sloppy. There were many times where he would talk to people and he would be like Dakota tries to talk to him. He just walks away mid conversation. Dakota looks at the camera like Jim Halpert. Look, what the fuck just happened? Like there's so many sloppy moves like that. But he was so high up on the list, a lot higher than other Wisconsin newbies have been because of the fact that like the beginning he was in a pretty good spot, even though like I was a clear target that first vote. I didn't want Jasper to go. Dan wanted Jasper to go. I did not. Kyle did not. Arthur did not. That's a majority of the tribe who wanted him to stay. Like we all wanted Jasper to stay. So I mean, I'm so confused with why Dan did that. But even after the second round, he's really not in trouble till he goes over to the new Wolfpack, and even then, he's smart enough to recognize, like, oh shit, like I'm in trouble, and
Yeah.
he's smart enough to make the moves to keep around, and like kind of like what we said, he makes that move, Kyle Wilson's third vote off of the season, and he basically is like, hey, this is what you need to do to survive. So, like, this is what I'm gonna say. Like, he's smart with that. And I will give him credit for that, as well as the Arthur move, where he looks at it and he's like, okay, if Arthur's saying this against Dan, truth or lie, he could be doing it to me, and he's smart enough to make that active move.
Yeah.
However, it's what he does after that kind of blows it, where it's quickly revealed that like they all figure out quickly that he did it, and then he's kind of on the run for the rest of the game, where he does only get by because he won those challenges. Which again, it is good that he wins challenges, and I will give him credit for that he's able to pull it out when he needs it. But you don't always want to rely only on challenges and idols and advantages, because I mean, personal experience, that isn't going to always be the main factor that helps you win at the end. Is it going to help? Absolutely. But if you play it right, it will help you. If you play it wrong, because like I guess what I'm trying to say is like if you play yourself in the best position when you do have advantages or immunity, then you'll be setting yourself up to be in a great position if you don't have idols, advantages, immunity, whatever. But Jasper, I feel like just kind of didn't. But again, Jasper does make really good moves in the game, and that's why he was, for me, like 13, 14. Like, he was on the verge of making my top 12. So, I mean, Jasper was someone I want to give credit to as well. So, I'd love to see Jasper back. He was a fun villain on one of the fun villain newbies. There's another villain I think we're definitely thinking about who we'll get to down the line. But Jasper is someone who I definitely would love to see back later on. Because like I've said, like I think now that he knows how the game works, he knows everything, he might be able to say like, hey, I know this time not to walk away mid-conversation with someone. Like, I don't know, Jasper kind of reminded me of me in my first season with how like everyone just wanted him out. And he always found a way to slip out of getting voted out until like it got close to like the middle of the game, plus the end, or whatever you want to call it. Like Jasper is pretty good, and I do see potential in him. So he'd be pretty funny to see in a return to see if he would do the same shit as before, or if he would actually play a lot smarter. So
Yeah, that's why I kind of like having these two both in the same little tier right here of honorable mentions because I mean, yeah, they were both public enemy number one when they were in the game, obviously for different reasonings, and they both survived a lot of rounds. I mean, Jasper did survive. I know there's only 10 people that played, but he did survive 7 rounds, which is still very impressive. So we'll dive into our top 10s now. So this is our top 10. I had to give our little honorable mentions, credits where credits due. Even if you're not on this list, guys, don't forget you still might get asked to come back again, obviously, and can prove me and Richie wrong. So here's Richie's number 10.
All right, so Maddie was always going to make my top 10 because when I counted out all the newbies, took out the obvious people that I wanted to push out, Maddie was one of the people who I kind of like what you were saying before. She did survive several rounds, and this is just coming from personal experience. When I was on Redemption Island with Tyler, we all thought that like every single round, we were like, Maddie's next, Maddie's next, and the fact that she survived the whole 3 to 4 rounds after me, where like most of the time, like people who people like to say I brought in, like someone like Thomas, Vanessa Marin, or Kyle Wilson, feel like those three didn't survive that long without me, or if they did, it was because of they were seen as like a follower or whatever. But like Maddie survived kind of by her own strategic game, and that is something I was really proud of her to do. As she was kind of like, I don't want to say my first pick. Like I've done casting stuff for Survivor since C before, which for those of you guys who don't remember, that was the Survivor thing I did. Don't look it up; it got canceled. Fuck the people who did that. Anyways, so Maddie was someone who, like, honestly, kind of reminded me of like a bit of like why I loved casting with all that, because it reminded me like, hey, there are definitely great gems in every cast, and Maddie was one of them. She knew how to survive. She knew what tactics to do to get by. The only knock I have against her is that A, she got out super early, and B, the thing with her is that she only played once, whereas some of the other people I played a couple times and or made it more rounds than her, and she was kind of on the run after I was taken out early on. But even then, like Maddie was smart enough to talk to the right people. She knew what to do to get by, and although I was saying before my honorable mentions, like had she made the merge, whether it be comeback or just survival, I do see a lot of options for her to make it far in a game. Like I heard from many people, like Cody and Hunter, for example, who really loved working with her, and I definitely know she was playing up a really great social game with them. And I can definitely see them taking her further into the game to a point where she would be the swing vote to like decide like which side am I going to work with. And which she picked, I'm really not sure. But Maddie's definitely someone I definitely have to give credit to, because it kind of like what you were saying before. I think Maddie in a different season with a lot less like big name Whitewater players, or even with like big name Whitewater players who are like not those specific people, like I think she could do really well. I think the only not complaint, the only concern was just that that specific season went up against 4 major Whitewater winners, as iconic as they were. It's kind of hard, to go up against those. So,
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much because I already just talked about Maddie, but yeah, I think she's right around this area.
Awesome.
Huh?
I said Maddie's awesome.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to dive into my number 10. Don't hate me, Matty Ice, but I'm going to give myself Matt here at 10. Yes, Matt, you are one of the most entertaining players we've ever had, easily. I was rooting for you, man. I was really pushing to get you on when we did Whitewater. Helped me film a lot in Whitewater at the end, and then he came for vengeance. Season 1, when he first played, took a huge shot at trying to get Adam out. Didn't work, backfired. He ended up going out. Cabin Fever comes in. Actually was in really good position in Cabin Fever. Survived a couple votes because they were winning immunity. And then they're in a tribe of 4 with him, Emma, Dakota, and Jasper. And he's actually safe at the moment. It looked pretty good. And then ultimately they're all going for Jasper. Jasper plays an idol. Dakota and Emma play their idols. So it's ultimately de facto that Matt was going to go out there. So Matt didn't survive long in that time. And then Evolution, again, didn't survive long. Started saying names really early, which I understand he wants to take some big swings at some big names and really make a name for himself in our game. But he's just doing a little bit too early, and that costed him again, even though I thought he would learn by now after playing for his 3rd time. So he really was talking a lot about trying to get Christian Hunter out, and it kind of backfired, and they teamed up against him to get him out, basically. I know Christian didn't necessarily write Matt's name down, but he was in the same kind of thought process to get him out. So Matt ultimately did get out 3rd in Evolution, and then he did come back into the game. But again, from what I heard from people, he didn't try to really change anything once he came back in the game at the merge. Try to go for big players right away immediately again, which I get, but if you're not going to have numbers, it's not worth trying that hard to get people out. So his second chance ended very shortly again. So I love Matt, and he said he retired. Maybe we'd see him down the road again in a special season. He has all the tools to be a really good Survivor player. He just needs to learn to have a little more patience in the game, I think. But I love Matty Ice, one of my good friends in real life. And the only reason why I have him at 10, not higher, is because he just never made it further in the game. I mean, based off the rounds he survived playing, He, survived 4 rounds in season one, survived basically 3 rounds in the second time, and then in Evolution, he really only survived 2 rounds because he came back in the game, got out right away. So the average of adding those all together divided by 3 seasons, that's only an average of really surviving 3 rounds. So that's why I got to put you at 10, Matt. Sorry. I really want you to get higher, and maybe one day we'll see it, but he is retired. So, Matt, you definitely got to get credit, though, because you're entertaining and you had a lot of right thoughts. It just wasn't great in plan of action. So.
Well, Matt, if you hate me now, you might like me a little bit more once you see who's number 9 on my list, which is Matt. I had to throw that joke in, but anyways, so with Matt, kind of everything you were saying before was the reason he wasn't too high, but I did want to give him credit because when he is in the game, he isn't afraid to make those moves, and I don't want to be the person that says like, oh, in a different universe, a different planet, blah blah blah, but like, I do kind of feel like, and especially for stuff like Cabin Fever, like if he was with a different cast or even like replace a couple people, there's a very high chance that some of what he says and does actually works. Excuse me. For Cabin Fever, for example, the beginning round where he fights Dolphin Sam for that advantage, and they're like, Matt, it's not yours. Sam had it, blah, blah, blah. And he tries to go over to Dakota, Kyle, and I'm going to say, like, hey, he has this advantage. Let's vote him out. I think with any other cast, they agree with him. I think just because of the fact that Dakota wanted to work with Sam, and because Kyle and Emma were kind of following Dakota around, like Matt kind of just got screwed with that situation, which, and I also don't want to say smaller tribes, but I think that season that was a detriment to like a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I mean, even in like other seasons where like Wisconsin won, where Matt flat out was like, he was my huge reason from what I've heard from people that I went out early. A huge reason was because of Matt, and I thought someone said Adam, but I really don't know too much into that. But I mean, with the fact that I didn't even peg it to Matt at all, I thought it was like Dakota, Ness, and Adam, and the fact that from what I've heard over the years, that Matt was the one who had such a huge say, and that really does show me that, like, yeah, he knows who he can get out early on. And I think had he made it past each and every one of these rounds he got voted out in all 3 of his seasons, there's a good chance he makes a deeper run.
Yep.
Like, I think, especially in Evolution, I think he could definitely go stealth bomb, work with Nate, get to the end, pull something off. Cabin Fever is a question mark because the Wolfpacks get to the end, then what? Like, could he convince them to keep him around longer? Who knows? I definitely think it's possible they still go for Kyle before Matt, but who really knows? And I do think, again, like we were talking about last week with Dolphin Sam, is that I do think he gets very lucky, Dolphin Sam, with the fact that Matt would have been someone who would have full-on campaigned to say, hey, Dolphin Sam's running this shit, are we going to let him do that?
Right.
Like, yeah. Matt's very active in the game. He's very aware. And I don't want to say, like, me, but, like, me and a couple other people, I feel like you replace a couple people, and there's a huge potential for people like me, him, and Maddie to go a lot further in any season. But because there's so many, like, that's what you were saying before, how there's so many big names that he tries to go for right off the bat. That's unfortunately why he's lower on the list, but I do know I wanted him in my top 10. He did earn a spot. Like, I do have respect for his game. One thing I gotta say, retired my ass. I think everyone who says they're retired has a price to come back. It's a price, a name, whatever. There's always something that's going to make them want to come back in the future. It's just, you have to wait for the right time. You have to wait for the right place. I personally get why Matt's annoyed getting voted off early 3 times in a row. I get it. I'm in that same position right now. That's why I'm taking a bit of a break. And this isn't just at Matt. This is not just at Matt, but it's also towards like other people I know, whether it's from Whitewater, SNC, Wisconsin, who said they're retired. It's like, no, I don't buy it for a second because I know the right time, the right place comes back up. Christian said the same exact thing after Legends, and we saw him come back. I didn't think Christian was ever going to come back to play, but anything can happen, So don't ever close off your options just yet because I definitely like to see Matt play one more time. So.
Yeah. All right. Love you, Matt. Diving into my number 9, I'm going to have Mike or Michael, whatever you want to call him. Showed a lot of potential both times he played. Got in the right alliance in Summer Solstice with him and Connor and Kyle that they're able to control their tribe, win some challenges towards the end of the pre-merge. And then once he made the merge, got a little karma for taking a swing at Allie. That costed him his game. Was the first jury member of Summer Solstice. Actually ended up voting for Allie to win the game still. So we'll give him credit there. And then Evolution, I really thought he played even better. I think he showed a lot of signs of being a really good strategic player and really playing his cards right, I thought. But ultimately, he just got outmatched. I mean, in Evolution, he was in a great spot. And he really wanted to target guys like Matt and Christian. And then he gets swapped into being with them. He's like, oh, great, this sucks. And then, he thought about possibly sticking with Matt and Christian. He stuck with Christian. But then he really campaigned for Matt. He just didn't like his vibe, was not very trustworthy of him, which I understand why. And then from what I saw and what I heard, a lot of people led that vote to get Matt out, but Mike was a big factor in it, really pushing for it from the videos and the episode. And then ultimately, again, it looked like Maddie was going out and they blindsided Mike. Really, not really for no reasoning. And it's because of those trust issues that he formed in this first time he played, even though it was only one person. So it came back to bite him. But again, this is a guy that definitely we need to see in the future because he's a physical, beast. He can win some challenges. He's got this strategic mind. He's very smart. He has the right thinkings. He's played a couple times now, knows how the games work. So I had to give him that ninth. I put him a little bit above Matt just because I think he had times his moves out a little bit better than Matt so far. But yeah, I had him at 9. Not much else to say. I think he definitely just has a lot of potential and he hasn't fulfilled it yet.
So it's actually funny because your number 9 is actually my number 8. So yeah, obviously everything you said before, he definitely has a lot of potential. Something I did kind of notice is that both times Mike played, his tribe had to go to the first tribal. He was at risk, but he was able to pull something out where he got with the right people who wanted him to stay, who wanted to work with him, whether it be for a shield, idols, or whatever. People still want Mike around. And I kind of like you said, like the alley move is something that still haunted him in Evolution, which a lot of distrust, but something that I really did think Mike is good at is just trying to find like survival tactics where even if he's at risk, like Summer Solstice, the losing tribe, 1, 2, 3 people goes out, he's targeted pretty frequently, but he's still able to find a way to get people to like him just enough to want to keep him around. I do think that social charm and charisma is something that he can definitely use to his advantage. And even talking to him and other people in Evolution, his tribal he went out at, I think he actually was essentially on the verge of staying. And then he went to the bathroom, and in that time, they're all talking like, do we really want to vote Maddie off over Mike? And I think that's kind of what screwed him, was just him walking off for just a couple minutes. But the thing with Summer Solstice and Evolution is that if things worked out for Mike, I can definitely see him making it to the final 3. I think it's very obvious where if Tyler flips, Allie sticks with the Susus, they go to final 5 together, Allie and Tyler are 4 and 5, and then Mike's in the final 3. Like, I think the guys stick together clearly. Was for Evolution, it's more of a question mark if Mike would have made a same type of run or a deeper run. Because, again, the trust issues, all of that. Excuse me. But with Mike, what I do think he could possibly have just did something like Colin or Cody, charm his way to the top, work from there. And I'm mentioning their winning seasons, but
yeah,
I don't know. Mike is someone who I definitely think when he gets into the right alliance, he's very active. He knows what to say. He knows what to do. And it's kind of like Maddie, survival tactics just to get him through a lot of those rounds. I think both rounds he kind of got. Like, I feel like in Summer Solstice, I do want to kind of say flat out, like, he was kind of screwed with a big twist being the comeback challenge, where if he had not been involved in that and Allie doesn't come back, Mike most likely is able to make like a stealth bomb run all the way to the end somehow and possibly get a lot of votes.
Yeah.
Well, unless he's up against Connor, because I think we all know Connor easily kicks anyone's ass in the end that season. But I do think, I don't want to say like it's because of a twist he got out, but it's like I feel like had it not been for the comeback, possibly not. I do love the comeback challenge. It's entertaining, and I do feel like it adds another level of strategy to the game, but
yeah,
I think it's just a lot of
luck.
I don't know. It's just a lot. But Mike, I definitely would love to see back. He's definitely very interesting. I definitely do see him winning in the future. The thing is just that it's kind of like Alex. can we see him not get screwed early on? Because I feel like once he and Alex are screwed early on, you know, and start coming up, they're kind of on the run. And it's only a matter of time before that cop car catches up to them and they're thrown in the back seat. So
yeah, I will say too, in Evolution, he was very close to coming back. It was him and Matt came down to in the comeback challenge. So if he made the merge, who knows what maybe would have happened. But
I was clearly rooting for Mike. I just want to say that now.
All right, well, I'm gonna get into my number 8 then, and it's actually a player that you already had ranked as an honorable mention. So that is gonna be Jacob for me. This was another person that I was just hoping one day to get into our Survivor Series. Glad he got into Wisconsin. I hope to see him back eventually. I have asked him. It just hasn't worked out because he is a little bit further away than most people are that play this game. But man, Jacob, first off, entertaining as hell. One of the best characters we've ever had on the show. Second off, I think he's got a lot of potential. Yeah, he didn't play insanely great when he played, but the reason why I have him over like a Mike and Matt is just because he has the tactics to do it. He really was able to draw people towards him when he played, and he kind of got screwed a little bit from a swap. It seemed like early on his tribe in the first season of Wisconsin, he had numbers. He had a great alliance going, and he wasn't afraid to really talk to anybody or really make an alliance with anybody. And he really thought he had things going his way, but he was just wrong. He got outmatched. He trusted too many people a little bit, and that just comes with playing the first time. I just think the potential he has is off the charts, and that's why I have him a little bit higher than some other people. A little biased there, but I think Jacob.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. 100%. I'll say right now, Jacob is someone else I really want to see back in the future. If I ever host a season and I have to bring back returnees, Jacob's towards the top of that list because Jacob is someone I also see potential in, and obviously, big names like Wisconsin one was full of them, full of a lot of the whoever in Whitewater was pretty much there. So, I mean, I can't give Jacob too much slack for that. Jacob does have a lot of potential, though. So, and I do think, like you were saying, social charisma and the charm he had draws people towards him. So,
yeah, and I think too, that flag football challenge. I mean, he was pretty much on his own there in that challenge, and they made some things work. And yeah, he could definitely be a challenge beast too that we didn't really get to see because he got out a little earlier. But he kind of got tribe swap screwed a little bit, even though he thought he had the numbers. Huh?
No, I was saying the term is swap screwed.
Swap screwed he got.
Yeah.
He'd seem like he thought he had the numbers, but it just didn't work out. But if you're watching this,
he technically did. He did. He got out because Dakota, if I recall correctly, played an idol, and I think it was Michael or Brienne.
On the revote, right?
Yeah, apparently Dakota voted, I think it was Dakota voted Brienne, and then Brienne and Vanessa and Jacob voted for Dakota. Dakota played an idol, if I recall correctly, and then Michael voted Jacob just on the off chance that an idol came up. So I think that's really the only, because then it went to a tiebreaker, and clearly Michael and Vanessa were like, "Oh, we want Brienne to work with us," but
yeah, he just got outmatched.
I worked with her that season. I'll say that.
He just got outmatched a little bit, but yeah. So that's my number 8. We'll dive into our number 7 just in a moment. You want to play Survivor, our version, here in Idol Identifier Studios? We've done countless seasons. We did 10 seasons of Survivor Whitewater. 9 of them are on this channel. We have done 4 seasons of Survivor Wisconsin, the new era. We are looking for you. We're looking for new players for the future of our game. If you're interested, DM me on idol.identifiers on Instagram, comment on this YouTube, or if you know me personally, reach out to me and any contact information that you have of me. Let's make it happen. It's a great time. Got a chance to win some money. Got a chance to meet some new people. It's a fun time. Get away, get off your phone for a whole day, possibly a whole weekend, and really just see what can happen. So if you're interested, hit us up. We're looking for the new faces of our Survivor Series. All right. So now we're into Richie's number 7. Kick it off.
My number 7 was Dan, the one person who didn't fuck me over in Cabin Fever. I will be petty about that. No, seriously, for Dan, something I will say is that beginning, even though I was talking about this with Jasper before, that Dan's really the only one who wanted them out, and Dan was kind of on his own island. Dan's loyalty was something that definitely made some people. I feel like it was a huge reason why people liked Dan was because he was willing to stick with the alliances he made. He was willing to be loyal. He was willing to just kind of help his allies out. And while I wouldn't call him like the biggest power player in the world, he definitely had a lot of win equity at the end. Where had he not gotten rid of certain people towards the end, I definitely think, we were talking about this before with Emma, where how she and Dan, if it was her, like Emma clearly wins. But even then, I could still see a situation where because we see him bonding with Kyle, talking to him. I still see a potential chance that maybe he's able to talk to Kyle and get Kyle to start thinking, like, do I really want to vote Emma or do I want to vote for Dan? Because Dan is smart with jury management. He talks to people, he gets them on his side. And Jasper's big move is in defense of Dan. When Arthur's saying, like, oh, let's get Dan to, like, trick Jasper and all of that. But, like, it's partially in defense of Dan, who wanted Jasper out all the way over, like, to start the game. And when Dan does get immunity, whether it be individual or whether it be tribal, like, he's smart enough to try to build those connections with people to get people on his side. Like, he's smart enough to kind of base off, like, social game, which, again, it's definitely evolved since the beginning, all the way back in Whitewater, 2020, whatever. But, like, Dan is definitely someone who, like, in a different season, a little more people, I could see Dan definitely rocking the game, like, very early on. Like, I know Dan probably hasn't really responded too much about coming back in the future, but, like, Dan is someone who I definitely think has a very high win equity when coming back. Like, he knows when to keep his mouth shut, he knows when to start talking, and when he does start talking, everyone loves him. Like, socially, he's very high on people's radars towards the end because they know, like, hey, if he's at the end against, like, someone who is in the Wolfpack Alliance, I don't know, which I kind of feel like was weird because I feel like any of them went over Dan, possibly, but again, I could see a situation where Dan, his jury management, comes back to help him. So, like, people just gravitate towards Dan, like we were saying with Jacob before.
Yeah.
I do feel like Dan does make smart decisions when he is immune to give him at least a fighting chance when he's not immune. Yeah. I think the only reason that he isn't higher on my list is because, first off, the other players on my list, I think you'll get it when we do get to that. But I think it's also because of the fact that again, with it being a shortened season, we don't see a lot of Dan. We see a lot of, like, these other players, but with Dan's season being so short, we don't get to see a lot of Dan. Yeah. So, I don't know. Dan was someone I definitely wanted to include in here to give a shout out to, because Dan was one of my favorite people to play the game with. He was super fun. He was super chill to hang out around. And, like, if I would have made it further in the game with Dan, I definitely would have tried to stick with him and Dolphin Sam. Like, Dan's someone I wanted to play the game with when I first saw he was on my tribe. He was someone I just felt like, with what I said before, I gravitated towards Dan because I felt like I could trust him. So, and I mean, I was kind of right. He didn't technically vote for me.
Yeah, so
I just want to give a shout out to Dan with this because I do feel like Dan definitely someone I definitely felt like deserved credit for his game. So,
yeah, I mean, I didn't have Dan in my top 10. I had him at 14. And I think it's because, like you said, a lot of people, I think, would have beaten him at the end. I don't really think he did anything special in his game, in my opinion. I don't think he played standout. I think he's a smart guy, and I think he did have a good social game. But besides,
do feel like sorry to finish.
Yeah, besides winning a few challenges, I don't really think he did much, in my opinion. And I would like to see him again in the future. I'm not sure because he didn't really get back to us when we tried getting him for the reunion of Cabin Fever. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're giving him the credit because he definitely deserves it. But yeah, in just my opinion, I just don't think he's deserves to be that high.
The way I see it is that sometimes you don't have to do anything overly special to get, because sometimes if you do something over the top, like Jasper, he did all those big moves right before the merge, he did all those big moves at the start of the merge, it just put a target on his back the first time he didn't get immunity. You have a lot of these other big players like Matt who tries to make these big moves early on. It doesn't endear him to people want to take him out. I think it's definitely picking the time to make these big moves and deciding when is the time to do it and when is the time to just keep your mouth shut and not make a big move. It's picking and choosing. I feel like Dan is really good at picking and choosing. I think sometimes not doing anything flashy or big can be the biggest help to your game. I mean, we see this all the time in Survivor where all these big players who end up winning the game, they might not do anything major in the game, but they're smart enough to keep their mouth shut until they know they can safely make the move without getting any flack for it the next round. So that's just the way I see it. So.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I just don't really think. I'm not going to dive into too much more. I
Yeah, I
don't
think
know.
this is like the only one we've really disagreed on. But
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying.
not that it's bad, but
I just think the other people I have ahead of him just are stronger players. And yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I'm not saying Dan needs to be flashy by any means. I think maybe it's just the season as a whole too wasn't like a great season. Maybe I don't know, but
Well, I
well,
just want to say this: when it almost reminds me of the Ness argument, and when we did our Whitewater rankings. So watch him win like one of our next couple seasons now.
if
Like
he
next time he comes on, watch him win.
if he ever
Dan, I'm rooting for you. I'm gonna bet money on you.
if he ever responds to come back, maybe. All right, we're gonna keep it going here because we got a lot to get into still. So my
Yeah.
number seven's Liz, and character wise, she'd be probably top 3 to 4 of new players. But I will say she shows a lot of potential, and she's a player like a Ness that could, if she comes back, really take the skills she learned how to play the game. She's a great social player, probably one of the best social players we've ever had. But I will say, I think a lot of her game was very dependent on Corey and having that alliance with Corey and Ryan from the start of the game. I think that kind of drove most of her game. She did going back and forth with Allie a lot in the merge, which helped her game. But the reason why I don't have her higher is just because I don't think she did anything crazy. Yeah, I know we just said that about Dan, but yeah, I know you don't have to make flashy moves, but I just don't think she did anything that deserves that she should be ahead of these 6 people I have ahead of her, gameplay wise. Yeah, character wise, she should be higher than this. 100%. I loved her. She's an awesome person. I hope we really get her back in the future because she could definitely dominate and do way better. She did win a challenge, and she had a competitive edge to her, which I liked too. I just the reason she's at 7, I just think the other 6 players are better, and I think a lot of her game depended a lot on Corey in that alliance. So at the end of the day, she might not say that, but that's the way the votes kept going almost every round. So that's all I'm going to say about Liz. Love you, Liz. You're a great player, very good social player, and I hope to see in the future and prove me wrong, and I'll rank you up higher. All right, ready for your number? Huh?
And so it's literally like a flashback to me bitch at Haley and Rob to come back in Fans versus Favorites, where I'm like, you two come back, prove me wrong.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it. Let's dive into now Richie's number 6.
Ooh. Number 6 for me was CC. I actually thought about it because he and my number 5 flip flopped a little bit. I mean, definitely, like, we were talking a lot about him last week with how he's definitely a solid player. He knows when to talk to people. He knows kind of like survival tactics, what's going to get him by, what's going to help him a lot. And, I mean, Chris, I gave you your nickname, CC. I saw you liked it in the comments, so, I'm glad you approved the nickname we gave you, or that I gave you. So, the only reason I didn't put him up higher, I do think he has a lot of win equity in the end. But if he's up against Nate in the end,
he wins.
Who would they have seen as the potential leader between the two of them? And even then, it's like, does he win against Christian or Hunter? Because if it's that Final Four, like if I'm thinking of it as like, if he makes it any further than he actually did, it's one round, the finals. So does he realistically win? I could see him maybe making a definite second place over potentially Nathan. I could see him definitely getting some votes. But regardless of whether it's Christian or Hunter or whoever, does he win? I mean, this case scenario, let's say it's Hunter. I think Chris, like Christian did in this real life scenario, if it's CC, Nate, and Hunter, I think same thing. They both kind of get their asses creamed by Hunter.
Yeah.
But I do think CC, kind of like what we were saying before with Maddie and other newbies, that if it was a different season, plays a couple people, there's a good chance that he could have gone very far. Like, we do know he's smart enough to talk to people. He's smart enough to not be too flashy in a way that's going to make people suspicious of him. I do think that's something very great for his game. I do think he has win equity. He's someone who I can definitely see winning in a future season. The question is, I don't want to say how likely is it, but for this season, it's like, how likely would it have been for him to win and get the respect from the jury, considering that most of the people who were on the jury were returning players? With the exception of like Zach, most of these people were returning players at the merge who probably wouldn't have been full on ready to give the money to someone who was a newbie. So I don't know. I do think he plays a very solid game, socially and strategically. He makes some moves to get to the end. I just think him and Nate, a huge problem they both had in Evolution is that they should have made the big moves when they had the chance to. And honestly, I totally get from being in that position. It's hard to see and hard to say, like, when is the right time in the moment. It is definitely hard with how fast-paced it definitely is. But I think it's like they should have made that move a little sooner. Yeah. But I don't know. Like, I do think that CC is someone I would definitely love to see him come back and play the game again. He's very fun to have around, very chill, and I think definitely helps his game too with the fact that he isn't overly flashy. People like him more. People like kind of like you compare him to Matt, because I'm pretty sure they were aligned at the start of the game on Toa, whatever the hell their tribe name was, and he had a small target on him just for the fact he was aligned with Matt, but they weren't going for him. They were going for Tyler and Matt, which shows that they were willing to work with him because he was calm. He talked to people, and I do think socially, the first couple rounds, you want to keep your mouth shut, your head down. That's my biggest struggle, keeping my mouth shut. I think we all know that in real life. But enough with that. I just want to say that, like, he's someone I do definitely see a lot of potential in, and if he does make it far, I think he has a good potential to make a good campaign. Yeah. Replace a couple of people, I think he could have won. To be honest, like, replace all the winners, I think CC has a good chance to win. So, I mean, I definitely can see him pulling out some in the future. So I'd love to see the potential he has, come back in, win more challenges, and feel like, hoo-ha, like, I don't know. So,
yeah, I mean, I'll get into Chris when I have him ranked. He's higher than 6 for me. And I think you just got to, I understand, yeah, he didn't make the big move when he should have, which they did it, but they tried to do it, but they did it too late. But you just got to keep in consideration, I know this is just about Wisconsin, but, I mean, you got to think about who he's competing against, which nobody had that really in any other season. Maybe season 1 a bit, but season 2 and 3, there wasn't a ton of big threats besides, like, Corey and Connor, and then, so that's all I'll say. I'll dive into Chris more when I have him ranked, but I'm going to dive into my number 6, which is your boy Ryan. Ryan, I don't know where Richie has him ranked. We'll get into that. But I was really pleasantly surprised. He seemed like a really good social player where a lot of people liked to get along with him, liked his vibe. Yes, this is similar to Liz. I think a lot of his game hindered on being in the right alliance with Corey and Liz. But he did a lot of things right. And he definitely kept his head down and definitely talked to everybody, which is the number one thing you should be doing in the game of Survivor, especially ours. Constantly talking to everybody. He definitely wish he turned it up a little bit more, and he started to towards the end, which I liked. And I liked that at the end of the game, he did have his own opinion and didn't even vote for Corey to win, which I was surprised. I just wish we saw a little more initiative for him and try to turn on Corey when the timing was right. But as Allie said in her game-winning speech, I mean, there wasn't really a time to ever get Corey out, so I get that. But I have Ryan here because I think his game holds stronger. Played against a better competitive group than in Cabin Fever, which a lot of players didn't have a big enough, realm of competitive players to go against, so I get that. But I think for the first time playing, what he stacked up against is really good. Wish we saw a little more initiative, but I think he started to figure out towards the end. He's a really smart guy, really good social player. Showed that he can compete in some challenges. Yes, he did get saved because Corey saved his ass with the States Without Power. So Corey did help Liz and Ryan a lot, and that's why they're not higher. They didn't make it really deep in the game, and it wasn't by accident. So that might be a guy we disagree on a bit, but I think he definitely deserves it, and I think he played a very underrated game. So
for me, Ryan didn't really make it that high in my rankings. Sorry, Ryan. For me, it kind of what you were saying, he was kind of intertwined with Corey, but something I will give him credit for, he was kind of in control of the Nate vote and Summer Solstice, where Corey is very clear, Corey wants to keep him. Liz wants to keep him. But he decides, like, no, I don't want to get. And Ryan is a swing vote. I think we talked about this last week. Ryan is a clear swing vote that round, where Nate's clearly going against Corey. Corey and Liz are trying to save Nate and vote Alex. Alex and Tyler are trying to vote Nate to keep themselves in a good position in the future. Ryan's a swing vote. Ryan says, hey, I don't know if this was going through his head, but it was a smart move because Nate was Corey's number one person, and now that became Ryan after that point. But I feel like how what you were saying, there was a bit of a lack of initiative after that point, where he's constantly kind of smeared by Corey and a couple other people, where they're like, he's not that good at challenges, he's whatever, he's not gonna do good. And I do feel like he's able to kind of coast off of that a couple rounds to keep himself safe, which definitely is the right move. The only thing that gets to me is that if he makes it past the final 5 round, I do think there's a potential he goes to the end because I don't feel like they'll take him out the final four unless it's like an alley situation where someone says like, "Oh, I have this special thing," and like unless it's something like that, I don't know. But even then, it's like I don't really know. I don't feel like if he gets to the final three, he would have won. I don't know if he had that win equity, especially if Corey somehow still makes it to the end. Like if it's Corey, Liz, and Ryan, I kind of peg my money on Corey. Like maybe Ryan gets a couple of votes and it's not like unanimous like we saw in real life. But I don't know. I just can't really see much of a road for Ryan winning. I do think he does play socially very well. Like I will give him that for sure. I think the problem was just that he was so attached to Corey throughout the game that there are multiple opinions that kind of looked at Ryan. They were like, Ryan was attached to Corey. And that kind of was this big surprise what you said before with the vote for Allie. I was surprised too. I'm like, okay, it's like gonna be like 4-1 Allie and Corey. And then he like votes for Allie and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like I really wish we could have heard more from him because I mean, maybe if we had heard more from him strategically, he would have been a lot higher by rankings, and who knows, maybe he would have went as high as this or even higher had we heard from him more. I think a big thing for me too is that it's like outside of win equity, how far he could have made it had he not been voted out where he was, as well as other stuff. Had he just spoke more of a strategy, we could have gotten to his head more and saw like, hey, this is what he wanted to do, this is what he was thinking, but we never really saw that from him as we did with Corey, who a lot of people saw as kind of the head of their little alliance. But I do also want to say that going against Corey to vote him out and going against Corey in general, I feel like are two different things. There were a lot of times where he did kind of go along with what Corey wanted, and I definitely think getting that trust with Corey helped him at the final, like, 6-ish, when he gives him the advantage, because he's like, Ryan, you're at risk, I'm going to help you by giving you this. And that's a good reason with the social game of keeping connected with everyone, not burning bridges, but I almost forgot what I was saying. I'm so tired.
Yeah, I mean, with Ryan, I think with like all these newbies, since a lot of them only played once, I'm kind of going off potential too. And I saw towards the end he really started to figure it out. And let's not forget when Corey played for the first time, his right hand man. I know it was kind of cold, but it was Dolphin Sam for a lot of the game, and
it was partially me for a while too.
I know.
It was back and forth.
I know, but it was a lot of. But what I'm trying to say is, a lot of Dolphin Sam. We saw how he turned out in the future season. So I am going a lot based on potential with Ryan, and I understand why you have him lower. But in my opinion, people I have,
he's not last. Yeah, he's not last month. I will say that he's not like dead last. He's definitely like. I forgot where I put him. Like I didn't really rank people too much below like. Jasper was around like 13, 14. I want to say Ryan would have been maybe around like 14 to 16 range. Yeah. So like he was definitely a lot higher up. I think, for those of you who don't know, I think there are about roughly 20 newbies overall we've had in Wisconsin so far. And Ryan was definitely not at the rock bottom. There's a clear couple people that I think me and Devin would both agree are at rock bottom. A clear couple people. I'm not going to say their names, but I think we both know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
Ryan's definitely not at rock bottom.
I'm definitely like Ryan is a guy like with how he played. I mean, I'm definitely like completely see why you have it ranked lower like that low. So I get that. This is my opinion, I guess. I just think also though, like besides my top 5 out of like 6 to 21, I don't really think a lot of these players were like great strategic players yet. So that's why I don't think that matters a ton for me. So yeah, I mean. We had 21 players, and I think Ryan definitely deserves to be towards the top. And I just think he aligned himself with the right group, and sometimes that's good enough for me. So.